Hi everybody and welcome back to Greater Manchester Stories. This episode's guest is Paul, who contacted me a few weeks ago saying, I've got a story for you, Nick, a Greater Manchester based story. So I phoned him, we had a conversation, and it's exactly the sort of story we need. It's about volatile relationships where the police don't believe you. It's about police corruption and police incompetence. It's really about how men are treated as second-class citizens in this country now. And we have that hashtag now, believe all women. And what we don't understand is some women are liars, just like some men are liars. Lying's a human trait. And once we start picking out a group of people and we start saying we must believe them at all costs, that's when we have miscarriages of justice. So first of all, hi Paul and welcome to the show.
Hi Nick, thank you very much indeed for having me on.
You're welcome. So let's get into it. So the first question is, you was involved in a volatile relationship. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, certainly. So in November of 17, I began a relationship with a lady who was a great deal younger than I. And it wasn't long before the violence started and I started receiving severe physical and mental abuse.
Right, and what did that lead to?
Very, very quickly into the relationship, as I said, I mentioned, I started receiving physical abuse. Each time that happened, it seemed to get worse and worse on each occasion. And every time it happened, I telephoned Great Manchester Police and asked for help. We didn't live together, so of course I relied on the police. Being an elder gentleman, I honestly, truthfully trusted the police. However, my trust has now diminished, and I wouldn't trust the police any further. As I said, I telephoned them a great number of times to ask them to come to remove this female from my home, and I was let down at every juncture by them.
Right, so you was in a volatile relationship, so maybe the police would say, well, you're a grown man, it's your relationship. We're not here to police your relationship for you. What happened after that? What trouble did you get into?
So initially, as I said, the violence was ongoing. It started, and every few months it would become harder, more volatile, and in the end, there was one time I was suffering that badly. I had previously had a heart attack, so I was on blood thinners. I bruised very easily. I bruised very badly, and I placed my hands on her arms to stop her hitting me. And she telephoned the police, and she said he's put his hands on me. Not he's hit me, but he's put his hands on me. And I admitted to putting my hands on her to stop the violence, and I was arrested. I wasn't charged, I wasn't cautioned, I wasn't warned. I was arrested, but I was released without any further action.
That seems to happen all the time now. It only takes a woman to accuse a man of assault, and the police seem to jump into action, believe it all on face value, blame the man, arrest the man, usually kick the man out of his own house as well for the evening, and then all charges are dropped, or no charges are presented, or no evidence is presented. So you're not the only man in this situation. It seems to happen all the time. I know personal friends who have been through this, and I've been contacted by dozens of men over the last couple of years who have been in the exact same situation. So what do you think of Greater Manchester Police?
Well, I'll give you an example of what I think of Great Manchester Police. So in January of 19, this female was in my home. Unfortunately for myself, I had a serving Hampshire police inspector who was staying with me. We knew each other from the military, so he was staying over for the weekend. And of course, the female then began to become very violent again in front of me and battered me. So in the end, the police inspector asked her to stop or he would arrest her. Now she left my home. Everything was reported to Great Manchester Police. Witnesses to the violence are sustained. Not one witness has ever been spoken to. The police inspector from Hampshire, but now 4 years down the line, has never been spoken to by Great Manchester Police. I've had to go out and speak to all the witnesses and get statements from all the witnesses to allow me to prove my innocence in allegations made against me by this female. Greater Manchester Police, as I said, have done nothing. They've not spoke to witnesses for a large number of months. When I was initially arrested in May of 19 for a very, very serious offence that she'd made against me, she alleges that this offence occurred between the 1st of January of 18 and the 1st of September of 18. I then spoke to Great Manchester Police and I said, well, can you give me definitive dates, please? Because I said for 5 of them months, I was outside the country. I was working for a UK-based company and I was employed outside Europe. No investigation was completed by GMP. This company were never spoken to. Details were never recorded. Witnesses were never spoken to. I've lost all faith in Great Manchester Police. You attempt to contact them and they ignore you. They don't supply you with evidence. They don't supply you with any details. They just stonewall you.
So her accusation against you was you committed a crime against her, and all she can say it was within this 9-month period.
That's correct. Yes. So she had me arrested on the 9th of May of 2019. 3 days previously, she'd put all over Facebook that she'd implied certain things over Facebook. So people knew, even I knew that something was going to happen. And then 3 days later, at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm arrested by a DC Cullerton from Rochdale CID. I'm taken to the cells. I'm kept there for 12 hours. I'm interviewed, and not one piece of investigation was ever completed by this officer. I then phoned her back up on the 10th of June, where I'm told that there's no further action being taken against me. I then asked her to carry out a complete, full investigation, again looking at myself as a suspect, but also this female who'd previously accused 2 other men of the same offence, to which DC Cullerton said to me, "Oh, just draw a line over it." She said, if I'd told anyone else there was no further action, they'd be jumping for joy. Now, this coming from a detective who's destroyed my life completely is just, it's not fair.
And there isn't any justice for men these days. That's how it seems to me as a man. It seems there is no justice, that women can make accusations against you, and then it's down to you to prove your innocence. It's not down for them to prove you're guilty anymore now, or to supply evidence. One phone call, one statement, and you're arrested, and you kept in cells for 12 hours and then released with no charge because there's no evidence, which then makes me think, what was the point of arresting you in the first place? And the reason why they arrested you is because government have been telling the police now for decades, you need to crack down more on domestic violence. You need to crack down more on that. So the police now are just ticking boxes so they can report back to the government. We've not prosecuted anybody, or we've not prosecuted more people, but we've arrested more people, but we've not pressed any charges because there was no evidence. It's not the way British justice used to be done.
You've made a very valid point there, Nick, because one of the officers who arrested me, so I was arrested, as I said, in May of 19. I was further arrested in January of 20. Now, I was arrested for walking around a country park. I turned up at this country park nearly 1 hour prior to the complainant. She turns up, she sees my car, she takes photos of my parking ticket, photos of my car, and then she walks around the country park and she sees me from nearly 1,000 meters away. She walks towards me, videoing me, taking photographs of me. That's one incident. The second incident is I then contact her friends to try and get help in proving my innocence, because Great Manchester Police and Rochdale Police had done nothing. In January of 20, I'm arrested for alleged harassment because I walked around a country park where she's videoing and photographing me. Now, my concern there is that the person who arrested me is a female by the name of D.S. Barker. D.S. Barker, 4 months previously, was going to appear as a witness against me in a civil non-molestation order that this female had taken, and then she withdrew her application. But D.S. Barker was going to appear as a witness against me. She'd never met me. She'd never spoken to me. And then 2 months after the allegations against me in the non-molestation order were withdrawn, I'm arrested by this female. Now, to me, that is a huge conflict of interest. I've reported D.S. Barker to Great Manchester Police because this officer has, not only has she committed a conflict of interest, but she's fabricated evidence on her statement. We appeared in court in October of last year, and my solicitor stood in front of her and basically called her a liar because she omitted from her statements that I telephoned Great Manchester Police on a large number of occasions, that I was also a victim listed under Marek. Now, this officer stood up and clearly stated that she'd not checked any police records about me. All she'd done is fabricated a statement.
Appalling, absolutely appalling. And we wonder why people have lost trust in the police across the country. And we wonder why they used to be a respected institution 30, 40 years ago. And now, a police officer can be assaulted now on the street and nobody will go and help because,
no, not at all.
Because we don't feel they're on our side anymore. And this is something I'll change if I'm elected mayor, because a society without a decent police force will be a failing society. We need the police. We need a competent professional police force. Otherwise, anarchy rules.
You're quite right. And it's not just the ground force police, the people out on the beat. It's every rank. I'll give you another example. Is a female by the name of D.I. Maxwell. I had written to the Chief Constable, Ian Watson, at the time, in September of 19, to ask for a full investigation into my arrest. I said, because they've done nothing, as you know. And I was assured in an email that a full investigation would be completed by a female D.I. Maxwell. 2 years later, I then approached the Crown Prosecution Services to ask what is happening in relation to my investigation, because I've submitted no evidence, no witness statements. And the Crown Prosecution says to me, Paul, we've never been contacted by Greater Manchester Police or D.I. Maxwell to look into false allegations made against you. I then apply to the Professional Standards Branch to find out what has gone on. I then am written to by a DCI Reid, who is possibly one of the senior people in the Professional Standards Branch, who look at corrupt police officers. This female said to me, all your evidence has been sent to the Crown Prosecution Services. Well, I know it hasn't, because I'd received an email from the Crown Prosecution Service saying, we've never been contacted by GMP. So this is a Professional Standards Branch also lying. Nick, it just goes on and on and on. Now, as I said, if someone told me this story, I'd be thinking to myself, they can't be telling the truth. But because I've experienced it and I've got the evidence to prove it, nothing's been done. And on one final point, I sent a 21-page statement and 45 evidence exhibits. A lot of the evidence exhibits were statements written by these police officers in which they'd fabricated evidence, they'd falsified documents. I have one judge who wrote back to Rochdale Police, DC Mount and DS Barker, and basically said, you've lied on your application. Therefore, I'm refusing your application because you've lied. To me, this is perjury. This is perverting the course of justice. And I sent the 21-page statement, the 45 evidence exhibits, to the Professional Standards Branch, and I received a letter back saying, we're not investigating them.
They're not investigating it?
No, they're not investigating it. And this is from the Professional Standards Branch. This is where DCI Reid works. So of course they're not going to investigate it, because I've listed her as a committing perjury, falsifying documents, telling me the Crown Prosecution Services have received documents, and they haven't.
This is shocking, absolutely shocking. I mean, there's a fine line between incompetence and corruption. So, some of the things happening to you could come under the title incompetence. But how much incompetence do you have to suffer before you start thinking, is this purely incompetence, or is there something else going on here?
There's got to be, Nick. There has to be.
Yeah, and the Police Standards Department, even if it isn't, I mean, they don't just look into corruption. They also look into incompetence, because that affects the service. I can't believe they're not looking into that. And you've supplied them all the evidence.
Yes, of course. And they've said, I wrote a 2-page statement, as I mentioned, to the Chief Constable in July of 19, asking for them to investigate my crime. T.R. Maxwell was told would do it. That was only a 2-page statement. I wrote a 21-page statement in April of 2021 and sent it to Chief Superintendent Nicky Porter at Rochdale Police Station. And I was told by the Professional Standards Branch that the 2-page statement and the 21-page statement are the same. Well, the 2-page statement was written before July of 19. I only met all these officers from January of 20. And so I also sought a subject access request to get all the evidence that DS Barker had written about me. anything. She is a senior officer, and I'm told there's no data held. They refused to give me the data, so they're saying that she's not written anything. I then requested all the evidence that was taken from my phone, which I know there's evidence on my phone to allow me to prove my innocence. I've been told once again, no data held. So I want to know, and I've asked GMP and they're refusing to answer, where the data is. Has it been removed from my phone? Has it been lost? Or has it been deleted? And again, no one will answer me because they know there is evidence on my phone that I can prove beyond any doubt that I'm innocent of all these crimes. And I've just been persecuted by Greater Manchester Police and Rochdale Police in particular.
What's your next step?
I'm waiting to have a meeting with both my MP and at the moment the Police and Crime Commissioner has had my complaint for a year. So I put in a complaint a year ago. It went back to the Professional Standards Branch and basically all they did, they replied back to my complaints and they basically cut and copied all my complaints in a document, sent it back to me. No answers from what they were meant to give. So I've now asked for another appeal review and I've listed all the things that they've not done. As I said, failure to investigate crimes, failure to recover evidence, failure to supply evidence that I'm asking for, failure to hold these people accountable, these officers accountable for perjury, for fabricating evidence, falsifying documents. I mean, these are all things that can only be tried in a Crown Court, Nick, and Greater Manchester Police are refusing to even investigate it.
Absolutely shocking.
Sorry?
Yeah, shocking. Absolutely shocking. Yeah, I've heard so many stories like this about the police now, about the level of incompetence, suspected corruption, officers not fit for duty, officers just ticking boxes. I mean, let's play devil's advocate. They may be extremely busy. They may have a million crimes on their books, in which case they look at your case and go, not interested, tick the box, get rid of it. Now, but that's not acceptable because you're paying for a service because you're a taxpayer. And we shouldn't be throwing crimes in the bin just because we've got too many crimes to investigate. It's a failing police force, but again, you look across the country at the moment, nothing seems to be working. We seem to be in some sort of societal decay. All the services are all beginning to break down. The NHS, criminal justice system, transport, everything is beginning to grind to a halt. I think we're living in scary times.
I agree with you, Nick, but it's unfair. I mean, I was arrested, and as I said, this female had made allegations against me. I'm the third male that she's accused of these offences. And then what she does then, she has people arrested, males arrested. That it just doesn't end there. It destroys our life. As I said, I've never been in trouble with the police in my whole life. Up to this conversation, I've never received a caution, a warning, or a charge, any offence whatsoever. But I've been arrested 4 times. I've been in court 3 times, and I've been found not guilty every time. And as I said, I suffer nightmares. I imagine the police banging on my door, and it probably sounds strange, but until you've lived through it, no one can say. And for DC Cullerton to say, just get over it, it's not as simple as that. It destroys your whole life, and it will destroy my life for my future now. And I want GMP held accountable, but they're doing nothing. They're refusing to do nothing. You write to the chief constable, and I've written to him, and I've complained that he's not replying to my emails. And people have written back and said the chief constable doesn't read his emails. They've clearly stated that to me. So they're just covering it up. And the chief constable, he clearly stated 2 years ago, if he couldn't change things in Greater Manchester, he would leave. Well, things are getting worse. They really are. And he's just burying his head in the sand. You can't contact him. You can't speak to him. It's like the mayor. No one wants to talk to you because you know you're going to open up problems that they already know are there.
Yeah.
And it's unfair.
It is. Well, I wish you luck going forward, Paul.
Thank you.
If you get a good result or anything that's worth updating, let me know and come back on, and we can talk about any updates going forward.
Yeah, sure.
So cheers for coming on, Paul, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick, for having me on and allowing me to tell my story.
You're welcome.